go live here in 3, 2, 1, go. Welcome everybody. Happy Wednesday. Super excited to see y'all back with us for another amazing chat. Before we get started today and get into our amazing speaker, sorry, that's on me. There we go. Sorry guys, the recording started popping up so I know what's working and what's not. Anyway, so welcome. Before we introduce our amazing speaker, I just want to go over some quick housekeeping items. If y'all have joined us for another chat previously, apologies, this will be a little repetitive, but I'll get through it quickly. All of our events are about our participants. So we want to make sure that the time that you spend with Power to Fly is well worth it. You are incredibly and enthusiastically encouraged to participate. You can do that in a couple different ways. You can come off mute to ask any questions, add comments. If we go over one of your questions and you want to add context, you're more than welcome to do that. But you don't have to if you don't want to. If you do come off mute for whatever reason, you will show up on our live recording and our live stream, which means, if you have your camera on, that's what will show up. If you have your avatar or display name up instead, that's what will show up. If you have privacy concerns and you don't want to show up on our recording, no issues, I understand. You can still participate. All you have to do is put questions, comments, context, whatever, into the Zoom group chat. And if you are in deep cover, black ops, don't want anyone to know you were here, then you can DM me directly. Just make sure you select my name from the dropdown. Instead of everyone, you'll send it to Meg Powerfly. Like I said, this is being recorded. So what'll happen is everybody that registered for today's session, whether you registered and you missed it because stuff ran long, hi in the future if you're watching this recording, or if you register and you can only stay for 5 minutes, or you're going to stay with us for the full 60. Everybody that signed up for this chat is going to get an email in about 1 to 2 business days, and it'll have a link to where you can go back and rewatch the recording. And I think it'll link you back to the recording that's hosted on our website. Now, if Shavit says something absolutely mind-blowing that you have to tell someone right now, you got to share it with a colleague or a coworker or a friend or family member, awesome. No worries. You don't have to wait the 1 to 2 business days. You can head right on over to our YouTube channel. We are at Power to Fly on YouTube, and you can check out the recording there, usually within about 5 to 15 minutes of the end of today's session. Now, if you if you go over to our YouTube channel and check it out, I very much encourage you to subscribe. It's a great way to make sure that you don't miss chats like this, and it also makes sure that your inbox stays uncluttered, so you don't have to worry about having invites and whatever. But it is just also a really great place to check out recordings like our past events, but also you can see recordings like from our mini summits, our mega summit that we held in February, all kinds of events that we've held. So definitely check that out. You can also look at our video archives on our website as well, and I'll be sharing links throughout the session to where you can find those things. And then you're very much encouraged to keep up with us on social. We are at Power to Fly on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And you're always welcome to take video or take pictures as we go through today's presentation and share with your community and let people know that you're learning and growing with Power to Fly today. We are at Power to Fly, or you can also use the hashtag Power to Fly. All right, so before we get going into the questions for today's session, I would love to introduce you to our next speaker, or sorry, to our guest for today. Shavit Barnahum is Senior Vice President of Leadership Development at Moody's Corporation. In her role, she runs the Leadership Academy, which focuses on enabling our leaders with the critical skills they need for today as well as tomorrow. Shavit is primarily responsible for overseeing and implementing a number of talent, leadership, and employee development training programs, as well as coaching and assessment across the organization. So welcome, Shavit. We're so happy to have you.
Meg, thank you so much. I'm really, really happy to be here. I am really excited for this session. I'll just add that I'm also joining from New Jersey. I have 4 girls. One is away in school. She's 19 and is living in Israel and kind of living her best life. And then 3 that are still here in the house, making me carpool them all around. And so I'm just really excited to be here. And this is a topic that is near and dear to my heart. So I'm open to all your questions, all of your ideas, and we can jump in wherever we want.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I can't imagine having a kid half a world away right now. So props to you for not going absolutely nuts. But I'm sure that your other children keep you much too busy to be kind of dwelling on anything but what's right in front of you. So,
and a weekly wine delivery also really helps.
Yes, absolutely genius. So before we jump into our questions list, I just want to highlight that obviously Shavit is part of the Moody's family, and we are here, kind of speaking with her in that context. But I also want to share that Moody's is hiring. So I'm going to share a couple links in the chat thread in just a moment, like I said. But one of the links I'm going to share is going to take you to Moody's Power to Fly company page. Now, when you get there, you can check out a couple different things like their company info, so more information on Moody's. You can also hit the events tab. That'll share with you, or that'll show you past events they've taken part in, events like today, as well as our virtual job fairs or our mini summits or our office hour sessions. Then the other thing you can do is click on the open jobs tab to see some of the roles that they have posted with Power to Fly. Now, at the top of this screen, as you see it now, when you log in, there will also be a big pink follow button in the upper right-hand corner of the page. Now, if you click that, it's going to put you on Moody's Follow Network. It does a couple of really great things for you. And one of the things that it does is it kind of acts like your friend at the company. So it puts you on their follow network, and that tells the Moody's Corporation that you are really interested in working with them. So it kind of shows you up and flags you on their radar, even if you haven't applied to anything. And it's always a really good thing to do, especially if you're interested in working with Moody's, but you don't see anything on the open roles, under open roles that currently fits you, or it's not the right time for you. Definitely check it, tick that box. The other thing it does great for you is it acts like your friend at the company that says, hey, they just posted this great role, you should check it out. So it'll alert you when they post new roles, so you don't have to keep, kind of refreshing pages and feeling like sometimes those job listings seem like they never change. So definitely take advantage of that. Like I said, you can do it for all the companies that partner with Power to Fly, but obviously we recommend that you do it, that you click follow for Moody's if you find yourself very interested in them after today's session. So I'll share those links in just a moment. Now, as we jump into questions, I just want to highlight for anybody who maybe signed up for this a while ago, or you're just jumping in and want to know what we're going to try and cover today. So the principal themes for today's conversation are going to be some ideas that you can implement to make your colleagues and employees feel more connected, strategies for helping build up and maintain that more connected workplace, as well as a discussion of the results that some of us have seen or that Shavit has seen from some of her initiatives. Now, like I said, we're going to try and cover those topics today. We came up with those topics ahead of time, but then we also kind of tweaked them to fit the questions that y'all asked leading up to today's session. So we combined all those questions, took out the redundant ones, and we tried to organize them into a conversational format. But like I said earlier, we definitely want to make sure that you guys get the most out of today's session. So to that end, if you have a question and you're not sure, if you pre-submitted it, but you're not sure if we're going to ask it, please feel free to bring it up if you like. If you have a question that occurs to you during today's session, please feel free. If we ask one of your questions and we're getting the answer wrong, or we're not approaching it from the right direction, or we ask for more context, please feel free to let us know that as well. You can come off mute to say it. Try not to interrupt either Shavit or another community member. I get paid to fill the silence, so please feel free to interrupt me. Do your best to, kind of maintain good Zoom manners. And unless you are actively asking a question, make sure that you remain on mute. You'll see me doing this off and on throughout today's entire conversation so that nobody has to hear the background noise of all the dogs snoring under my desk. But it's just to make sure that audio clarity is good for everyone. So do your best to stay on mute unless you're actively speaking. And yeah, please feel free to jump in with questions. Y'all took the time out of your day to be here with us. So definitely we want to make sure that you get, kind of first crack at asking questions, and you can really direct the conversation today. All right, so to lead us into our first question, let me stop sharing my screen here. There we go. So to lead us into our first question, this person had written in asking, what is your favorite icebreaker? So when you're trying to get to know a team, there's a couple different questions wrapped up in this, but let's tackle the icebreaker first.
Okay. So yeah, there were a bunch of questions in that particular question, but this is a great one. And I would say, so from a training perspective, like if you're running a training program, virtual or not virtual, I always really like things that get people moving and energized and connected. That's really the kind of the goal of the icebreaker, but movement And creating movement is one of the things that I think really works well in icebreakers versus I used to when I was a consultant, I was doing a program for another company, and the client insisted on doing the icebreaker. But in the back of the room, we would always say that she's actually an ice maker versus an icebreaker, because it was just such a, kind of static, stoic kind of, share this one thing. It was robotic. So movement, connection. So my favorite icebreaker I have this like giant card deck with like all these random questions on it. Like, what's your favorite vacation? Beach or mountain? What's your favorite hand massage or foot massage? That gets people walking around, so everyone gets a card. And then like, so for example, Meg, I would come up to you, I'd ask you a question, you'd answer, you'd ask me your question, we'd spend like 2 minutes talking, then we'd switch cards, and then you would have a different question that you would be going off and asking somebody else, and I'd have a different question that I'd be going off and finding somebody else. And the thing about that I love about this is that it's fast and it's loud, and you can make 5 new friends like instantaneously. And so it just like, and all of a sudden now you've learned something really interesting about someone that you can carry anywhere you want.
I love that. And you're right. Like if you have a kind of ham-fisted or really like overly formal or overly complicated, icebreaker that you're trying to get through, it is painful. It is like the last thing you want to do. And it makes it makes everybody kind of freeze up. Even if they would have really gotten along and gotten to know each other, it makes it a lot harder. So I absolutely love that idea of starting off with these questions, especially kind of the option ones, like this or that. Would you rather this or that? It kind of takes, I feel it takes a lot of pressure off of people to like come up with something really good or like something that's very, very true, as opposed to like, let's just go with your first impulse and then we'll kind of see where it goes from there.
And that's what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be easy. So don't be an ice maker. I guess that's the lesson I would say.
I love that. All right. So this person had also asked 2 follow-up questions. One was, what's your favorite ground rule and your ritual? Maybe like a ritual for opening up meetings or winding the day down or something in the middle. So let's talk about these kind of separately. Because ground rule kind of made me think like, oh, is this like a new thing like for office stuff that like I don't know about? So let's go with ground rule first, then we'll talk about rituals.
So if you're like a training person or an education person and you have to manage a classroom, there's always these ground rules. Like this is the way we're going to engage with each other. My favorite, and I do this, by the way, sometimes for meetings, especially like if I'm leading a talent discussion or a performance calibration, even for those kinds of sessions where you really need to have some ground rules for the way in which we engage. But it's really also ground rules around confidentiality and creating a safe space. So my favorite ground rule is just the Vegas rule, right? So what happens in this meeting stays in this meeting. People can be themselves. They can talk freely. They can feel like they'll know that they can experiment, that they can share, but it also stays in the room. And if we're talking really about authenticity today, what you want is people to be authentic and in the moment. And so you need to create a space where people feel safe to be authentic, where they feel safe to be themselves. And so that's why I like the Vegas rule. So what happens in this room stays in this room. And this is where we're going to play and experiment and do all of the things we need to do. From a favorite ritual perspective, I'll just, briefly share my screen. I just want to show you one thing that I sometimes like to do. If I can find my presentation, where did it go? Oh, here it is. Okay, sorry. Just going to share this. I like to do micro steps. And what I love about micro steps, and this is something that I learned when I went to a number of sessions from Thrive Global, is that there are little things that we do, and these little 2-minute, 3-minute things that we do within our day break apart the monotony, but also re-energize us. So one of the things that I'll often do is either a stretch break or a breathing break. And that lets you kind of reset your mind, reset your thinking. Like after lunch to do a quick stretch break, or right before, after an activity to do a breathing break. So rather than taking a bio break, to just do a breathing break, just really allows everybody to do that. So I have these little yoga stretch breaks that I'll incorporate into a program that might do that, will allow people to think about, okay, I've been sitting all day. What I love about these is that we can do them virtually. So if you're leading a program, or if you have a super long meeting, like a 2-hour kind of brainstorming session or something, halfway through, say, let's just take a 2-minute stretch break. And so you could do kind of a sun salutation with your arms. You could do a cat cow in the chair. You could do these kind of extended side angles if you're a yoga person like I am. And so and these are really easy to do, but just that moment of clearing your mind, that moment of refocusing and connecting with your breath. When there obviously there's like, I think there's like 72 different kinds of breathing that you can do. Not many people know that. And I don't know all 72 of them, but a lot of the breathing that you do actually brings the oxygen back into your brain. And so you feel, if you've done your breathing right, like you've actually just really had a nap and you get re-energized. So you can go back in for another 60 minutes or another 45 minutes or another hour, whatever it is. So anyway, I just wanted to share that with you because I find that these stretch breaks or these yoga breaks or breathing breaks are really, really helpful in terms of getting everybody refocused, getting out of your mind and just resetting.
No, I love that. I think it's a really great thing to highlight, especially, as we become more and more technology reliant and more, working from desks, whether we're in person or at home. It's one of those things you don't really realize how sedentary you actually are until you get up and move. So I love that idea because it can really kind of shake out you can feel people's attention starting to wane or their patience for this kind of starting to go. I love that. I think that's a great idea.
And sitting is the new French fries. So, French fries used to be the new smoking and now sitting is the new French fries. So I think that it's just this notion of the fact that like every hour, get up, breathe, stretch, even if it's 30 seconds, it will do wonders for the rest of your day.
First off, how dare you malign my beloved French fries, but I understand.
Not sweet potato fries, but just those ones that are in that hydrogenated fats or whatever that is.
I can't get into sweet potato fries, try as I might. I'll give them another shake. All right, so would you also consider that one of your rituals? Like, that's something that you consistently do throughout the day as well as in
so I have a series of micro steps that I use for myself, but so that's kind of something that I do. But then if I'm like in a team meeting or in something else, then we try to incorporate a stretch break. And we did a time management course for our entire organization, and we incorporated these micro steps into that because when you get refreshed and you can reset your mind, it actually allows you to be more focused. And so from a time management perspective, this is just as important a ritual as knowing how to prioritize or using a matrix or writing things down on your to-do list. This is just as important.
Awesome. Okay, thank you so much for going into that. Okay, so I am gonna hold some space here just in case anybody wanted to come off mute to ask a question. You're more than welcome to do so. And as we, pardon me, I got a frog in my throat. So feel free to, come off mute if you'd like. And if not, I'm more than happy to keep moving on to our next question that was submitted. No takers? I know it can be kind of a little bit intimidating to feel like you are the first one to come off mute, but please know that you're more than welcome to participate either on video, on audio, or just via text in our chat. All right, so this next person had asked, when entering a new career field, how can I build relationships to expand my network online that could eventually turn into coworkers or co-collaborators? And I feel like this is something that doesn't necessarily just happen when you're starting a new career field or pivoting. It's also something that's a familiar feeling to people that are just getting started in their careers. So what would you recommend to this person?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. And I think it really speaks to the fact that we as humans are just naturally drawn to be affiliative, right? So even the introverts among us that only need 1 or 2 people to get their energy and the extroverts around us that need 40, 50 people to get their energy, we are just naturally drawn toward affiliation. And so this notion where we've been at, especially in this virtual world of isolation, that's one of the biggest, I think one of the biggest impacts of the pandemic. And so relationships are basically formed through some affiliation. And so we have all of these things that are coming at us that are kind of surface level. So, Facebook or Instagram or what's the other one that my kids use? Oh, not TikTok. There's another one. I'm going to forget it. Anyway, there's all these things that we do that allow us to swipe left or swipe right. And, those aren't relationships. That's not real. That's not a real authentic connection. And so you have to find, in order to do this well, you have to really work at it. You have to find common ground and you have to have a natural curiosity about other people because it's that connection of you being curious and them being curious and asking those questions. So, you know, people, names, faces, they pass through our lives so quickly, it's easy to do that swiping. But in order to do this well, you have to pause. And it's the same, by the way, as the micro step and the reset, because all that does is it forces you to put a pause in the middle of all the running that's going on in your mind, to really, really pause and to reset. And so it's time to pause and invest in getting to know somebody. And to do that, you might have to make yourself vulnerable. You might have to give some of your time. You might have to help somebody reach some of their goals or help them solve a problem before you get into your own agenda. But these are the foundations that real relationships are built on. So it's curiosity, it's vulnerability, it's willingness to make time for other people. It's being open to that. And that's really where, you know, your kind of surface level coworkers, or at least your online network, as you start to get to know more people in the organization that you're in, that's how you not only begin to affiliate, but feel like you actually belong. And that sense that, you know, so not only do people have a deep need to feel affiliative, they need to feel like they can relate to people. And when you feel like you belong in an organization is when you have relationships and when you can really relate to the people that you're working with on a deeper level. But you can't do that by just kind of keeping things at the surface. You have to lean in and you have to get in there.
And I mean, I can totally understand that it feels really weird to try and make yourself kind of a little bit vulnerable, especially in a work situation. I mean, it's hard enough in social situations, right? Where you're places that you're supposed to be making friends. But I feel like in professional situations, it feels like the stakes are much higher. The rules are much more complicated. So yeah, I think that's a really good thing to highlight, is that, you know, you really do need to deepen those connections just from surface level.
And you don't have to be deeply personal, right? Like you don't have to get into people's personal lives in order to affiliate with someone or to really relate to somebody. There are other things, the way in which you think about something, or the way in which you saw that meeting, or just one moment of connection with somebody can actually lead to a beautiful relationship.
Very true. All right, so this follow-up question kind of dovetails nicely with it. This person wanted to know, how can we create connections from scratch? They say, I'm new to the city and I have no connections for people working in positions, jobs, or companies that I would like to work for. So this can feel really not only just isolating, but it feels like, where do I start?
Right.
And it kind of goes back to what you said about like not feeling, you know, realizing that sometimes you're going to have to like maybe spend a little bit more time on that other person before you really get to introduce yourself. So is there anything else you'd like to add to that idea, or something that should be noted for somebody in this position?
So first of all, I'm going to put a plug in for Adam Grant's book, Give and Take, because I think that when you get to a place in your life where you realize that you're surrounded by givers and by takers, and to kind of know which one you are, it helps to kind of think about how to navigate the world that's around you. But to answer this specific question, I will just say, look, it takes one person you connect with, one person you click with, one person you can shadow or learn from. And then every time you meet someone, you ask for another name. You ask for an idea, you ask for a connection. So for example, like when I'm networking, or if I'm exploring another field, or if I'm teaching somebody how to network, I make a point to walk out of the meeting with at least 2 more names. Like every time I meet somebody new, I never leave the meeting without asking for, you know, who are other people who are interested in them? Give me another name, and I walk out of that room with 2 more names. And it's almost like a pyramid, right? Like you start from just one name, but then you slowly kind of build and you broaden your network. And if you do a good job of managing that kind of stakeholder matrix or networking matrix, and you think about, you know, every couple of months, I should reach out to that person and I should check in with them and see how they're doing. But again, from a give and take perspective, you sometimes have to give a little bit of yourself, or they might need help working on a problem. So it's not just about you and what you need, it's also about them and what they need. And listen, it's okay to ask somebody to make a warm introduction for you. It's really hard. Like we're in a world now where even cold calls can feel really, really daunting. And especially if you're kind of really starting at the very beginning. But I really believe that people genuinely, they want to help each other. And no one that's on this call, or anybody that you know, or anybody in the organization that you're working with, nobody got there on their own. Nobody. There's not one person that did it all on their own. It's just not possible. So ask for advice, ask for ideas, ask for connections. And if you don't know anyone, then you got to join like a trade group or Toastmasters, or go to lectures or go to conferences. even if it's virtual, and then be open-minded. And again, I'm going to go with this theme about, because authenticity and curiosity in my mind go hand in hand. You have to put yourself out there. You have to take a risk in order to make a real connection. I kind of call it like professional chutzpah. So you have to be bold, but you also have to be knowledgeable and you have to be respectful. And that's okay, because people know that, especially when you're just starting out, like, people want to help people. They want to be able to look back and say, as a legacy, and you get to my place in your career, when you want to look back and you say, I helped this person get their start. I helped them make that connection, and look at where they are from now. And all those moments in your life, when you look back on it and you see all the people whose lives you made better, you then will pay it forward when somebody else asks you for that. So I just think, people genuinely do care about each other. If you ask in the right way and you're curious and you're real and then people will help you. And it just takes one, and from that one, you'll be able to grow it infinitely.
I absolutely love that. And you're totally right. It can feel really awkward trying to make those connections and be like, hey, like, who can you suggest to help me? But you're right. The more that you broaden that network, not only does that make it a little bit easier for you to kind of get moving and work towards where you want to be or what you want to do. But you're right. It puts you in a position of being able to make connections for other people. So you might not even have to be, long ahead of your career. Or ahead in your career when you are able to help somebody else. You might be the person that makes those connections for somebody who's pivoting into a new industry away from what you're in. So it's one of those things that kind of makes you feel at least a little bit better about how awkward it can feel sometimes, right? We do have a follow-up question that I want to touch on, but I am going to share preemptively in the chat. We are getting a lot of questions on like how to make those connections, especially like warm introductions. We have a really, really great chat that granted, I'm not just saying this because I sat in on it, but a really great chat with Kelly Kugler and I think her partner Jill from the Allura Collective about introductions and how to word these things. There's templates for like what to say, and it's what the difference is between, warm introductions and recommendations and what to really ask for from people. So I'll dig that up, as well as some other chats on the upcoming subject, because this person had asked about mentorship. So this question that just got submitted, this person wanted to know, how do I find a mentor who is a senior leader and can really help me cope with career transition blues and help me at the same time? And I feel like this is kind of just a more intense or more formalized form of what you've been talking about with like making connections with friends within your workplace. Does any of your advice change for when you're looking to find a mentor?
So it's a great question. So first of all, it's hard to find the right mentor. It takes time to find the right person that you click with, and but again, going with the premise that people really do want to help people. It's this notion of, if someone can answer this question, like this is how I've kind of thought about mentors in the past. Either what did you do when what would you have done, right? Or if you were in my shoes, what would you do differently? Or if someone can answer that question for you genuinely as you're kind of talking to people and meeting people, that's a place where you know that you're talking to somebody who's got empathy and compassion and can kind of take themselves back and put themselves in your shoes and think about it from that perspective. Because the mentoring relationship isn't really just about somebody telling you what to do and giving you advice. It's really also about them helping you to navigate by teaching you some of the skills that you need in order to navigate that relationship. So there's a bit of a learning component to it. You could get advice from a whole bunch of people, but that doesn't mean that they're your mentors. And the relationship should really be symbiotic. So I think that as you think about in your organization, you could ask people for advice about, is there someone you would recommend that is a good mentor, or is there somebody that you think I should meet with or talk to? And as you'll know when you meet somebody that you really want to be your mentor, and you're meeting different people. And again, it takes time. And I know for those of us who are even a little bit more introverted, and you might not think that I'm introverted, but I actually really am. But for those of us that are a little bit more introverted, it feels daunting. It feels harder to ask those questions or to ask for something, because you feel like, I'm going to be taking away from someone's time. Like, what are they going to get in return? And I'm telling you now, this on the side of from being a mentor to people, there's so much fulfillment that you get by working with somebody that you're helping them to think through and solve problems and navigate the organization. And when you see them being successful, there's so much value and purpose that comes from that. So don't kind of sell yourself short in terms of the fact that somebody is going to get just as much satisfaction as you will from that mentoring relationship. But you will know when you meet with someone and you think, you know, this is a person who I think could really give me valuable insight and valuable advice, and not just what I want to hear, but really push me outside of my comfort zone and call me on my BS, because that is just as important as all of that, like encouragement and accolades. You know, that's not always what you need. What sometimes you need is a good kick in the ass, and a mentor is able to do both.
I love that. I love how you kind of highlight that you do have to look for very specific things with a mentor. And one thing that I forgot, that didn't kind of occur to me until I was listening to you talk about mentorship, is when it's not less of a mentorship and you're just trying to make those professional connections, something to look out for is these sessions. They're usually called ask and offer sessions. We used to host a couple of them. I know it's something we're trying to get back on the books. But it's a really great way to go in and try and broaden your professional connections. But since you're leading with, hey, here's what I'm already skilled in and I could offer people, I need help with blah, blah, you know, learning how to tame lions, but I'm really great at web design and I can help you out with that. So it's a really great way to kind of make it feel a little bit more equal. And it kind of, I mean, plus, even if you don't really get anything out of it, being able to help somebody else personally makes me feel great and gives me a lot more momentum and motivation to kind of keep slogging through something that I'm maybe not getting so far in. So
the other thing, Meg, I would add to that is sometimes people will reach out to you because you were bold with an idea, or you were courageous with a thought and you put yourself out there. So I think sometimes, especially when you're starting out and you might be sitting in a room with a bunch of people who you might think like, what am I doing in this room? And these people are way more experienced than I am. And what could I possibly offer to it? But don't sell yourself short. Like, your perspective that you bring, especially if it's a new perspective or a different perspective, can really create a moment. And I'm going to go back to this theme of pausing. Like, if you can create a moment where people pause and listen to something else or from a different perspective, even if that idea doesn't go anywhere, right? Even if they're like, no, whatever, like you got to learn, whatever, all of those things can happen. Somebody's going to take notice and somebody's going to say, that person was bold. And that person put themselves out there and they were willing to take a risk. And let me talk, you know, and so when you're in that room, when you're in that setting and you can see that you lit somebody's eyes, or you caused them to pause, that's the person that you want to reach out to right after the meeting and say, hey, I wanted to get your advice about, you know, could I have said it differently? Or could I have done something differently? Or what do you think about that meeting? This is how I took away, and create a conversation from a shared experience. And that's where those relationships really start to kind of lean in, to kind of start to blossom. And that those moments, it's those moments that we let pass us by, because what happens is we'll leave the room and we'll say, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. Nobody liked my idea. They didn't go for it. They, you know, and we're like playing it around in our head over and over again, rather than finding a place to really, really like, whose eyes did I click with and who gave me like that little nod, or even didn't, or they rolled their eyes. Let me go and ask them like, what happened? What did you think? And get in, you know, try to just create that. And those relationships that are forged out of your courage and your ideas, those relationships are powerful.
I think that's so important to talk about, is that, you know, somebody else might be inspired by what you did. And especially if you know, like, look, so for me, granted, it's obviously and pretty demonstrably part of my job, but I'm good at talking to people about anything. And not everyone has that skill. And so being the person, like, I am a little bit introverted, but like knowing that I can go talk to somebody about pretty much anything and it won't be awkward after the first sentence or two is really, I mean, it's super helpful to me, but it also helps other people, because not everybody has the ability to do that or even wants to do it. So being able to kind of break the ice and make those connections is really helpful to myself as well as others. So like you said, kind of keep that in mind, that something that you maybe don't love to do, but don't find absolutely paralyzing and debilitating, might be just what's needed to make those connections and, you know, encourage somebody else to reach out.
Totally.
All right, so just as a reminder, y'all, we have less than 30 minutes left in today's chat. So please be sure to ask your questions if you'd like to get them answered today. Like I said, you can come off mute, you can put them into the chat, or you can DM them to me, as some people have been doing already. So please feel free to do that. So this person had asked, what advice do you have for best practices with onboarding to a new company while still working remote? The team cross collaboration is key to success for this newly created PM role that I'll be undertaking.
This is such a question, and it's so relevant today because most of us are still 100% remote all the time. And so it's hard. It's always hard to onboard into a new company. We always are impatient with ourselves. We're impatient with the impact that we want to have. And so there's all of that just happens with natural onboarding. But then to do it virtually, is just an added factor. So, for a long time, we really believed that the only way to meet people is to meet them live. That the only way we can form a relationship with someone is to meet with them live. But I think if the last year has taught us anything, is that we really can adapt to any situation. So we need to be agile, you need to be prepared, and you need to be patient. And those are my three kind of keys for onboarding: is agility, preparedness, and patience. So technology is an enabler, but your curiosity is key. So you've got to think about first, right? What are you most curious about? What do you want to know? How do things work? How do decisions get made? What are cultural taboos? Who knows all the secrets, right? Who knows where all the bodies are buried? What's the secret sauce, right, to being successful here? These questions can sound casual, right? But they carry a lot of weight for the way in which you acculturate, so how you kind of weave into the culture of an organization. And they show you that they show other people that you're thinking critically, and not just coming into a job, but you want to thrive, you want to be successful, and that means a lot. So what you need to do is you need to make sure that you're prepared for every conversation. Who is this person you're going to talk to? What do they do? Who do they know, right? How do they garner influence? And you might kind of change those questions depending on who you're meeting with. So key is to have a list of people that, who are the people you meet with in the first kind of month? Who are your second month people, right? You kind of have a list, and that list is going to continue to grow. People will say to you, again, just like in networking, you'll walk out and say, like, who's one more person I should meet with? Like, anybody else you think that I could really benefit from getting to know? And you'll get names from people that maybe aren't on your initial list. So you're going to have a list of people, you're going to have a list of questions. And then the second is really around collaboration. So who do you work with? What's their preferred style? Who's got the D on some of these projects? How do people brainstorm or crowdsource ideas in this organization? That doesn't mean that you, as the new person, can't come in and influence change, but to have the kind of influence that you want or that you might need in order to really get traction and get people to create some kind of difference, you need a foundation, and that foundation is based on authentic relationships. So that only happens when people feel like they're working with you on the same team and toward the same goals. So you get to know people by being curious, you get to know people by being authentic, but you build a relationship because you're collaborative, because you lean in, because because you take the time. And all of those things together that's the secret sauce for onboarding. So whether you do it live or whether you do it virtually, you want to meet people, you want to ask questions, and you want to not just go through the motions, you want to be genuinely curious.
I think that's absolutely amazing. And the idea that, because you're right, onboarding in a virtual sense is not really any more difficult than onboarding in person. It's mostly down to the prep, right? And making sure that you have kind of things ready for that new person. But it's it's one of those things that I feel like when most people enter a new whether it's just a new team or a new company or a new industry, you don't want to have that growing pains period, right? You want to feel like you come in and you belong there, and not seem like you're somebody that's new, that doesn't know the rules, that doesn't know, kind of the social mores of the group, all that kind of stuff. But this is the time where you can ask questions, because you're not supposed to know what's going on because it's an entirely new environment. So if you make a misstep, okay, then you're learning. You didn't know, because how could you know? Because you haven't dealt with this before. It's only your second day at the company or whatever. I've never heard the idea of the questions thing before. That's really great. I love that idea.
And I think the other thing is we are super impatient with ourselves. We do not give ourselves any grace, right? We think like I got to prove myself. I have to do all of these things. I got to deliver. Like And so you have to, out of all the people, give yourself a little bit of grace and give yourself time, because whether you're stepping into a new role or into a new organization, it really takes time to figure things out, especially the how things get done piece. And you're going to make a misstep, and you're going to take 3 steps forward and then 1 step back, and then 3 steps forward and 1 step back. And it could feel like a cha-cha, but what you want to do is you have to know that it's a dance. And that dance is what, and the more you do it, the better you get at it. But giving yourself grace and being patient. Look, this is advice I have to give to myself all the time. Like I joined Moody's 18 months ago, and it was with a specific purpose of doing something. And then all of a sudden, like, I have to do all this socialization, and I have to do all of these, like, all these meetings and recreate stuff. And I was like, do you guys know who I am? Like, I'm really good at what I do. And so I needed to, like, put that in a box and recognize that, like, in order for people to see me, to truly see me and to truly see my work, I really needed relationships. I really needed to understand how to navigate the organization. And I needed to just take a chill, take a breath, and recognize that it really takes 4 to 6 months to truly acculturate into an organization. So you're going to spend more time listening and less time talking, and you have to deliver some things. So don't get me wrong, like early delivery, having a few key wins, putting a few points on the box, whatever crazy euphemism, not box, board, whatever euphemism you want to use, you can, because that is very important. But you do that through the relationships, and you got to give yourself grace. We are our own worst enemies when it comes to this.
I feel like that's the understatement of the year, but yes, we definitely need to have more patience with ourselves, more understanding, and kind of be able to let those things go. We have a really great question in the chat, so I want to try and get to this. I know we only have about 15 minutes left, and I know there was a lot of questions that were asked all over the board. So I'll try and keep us, touching on those touchstones that we talked about earlier in the chat. This person had asked, in this virtual work world, what tips or ideas do you have for HR to keep employees engaged and connected? Obviously, hosting things like happy hours have kind of been done to death by this point. But do you have any other tips or suggestions for this kind of to navigate the situation?
So you listen, whether it's a happy hour or a virtual lunch, the point is to really take, again, with the pause, to truly connect, right? To really figure out, like, how do we connect? And sometimes doing something that's non-work related is really, really important. So we've done things like, we did virtual bingo. I happen to have 2 bingo sets. Don't ask me why. And I literally, like, we had people sign up. I emailed them pictures of their bingo card. I told them to use beans or whatever it is, that coins, whatever they wanted. And we did like an hour virtual bingo. We did a virtual scavenger hunt where people had to find things all over their house, random things, like, give me something that's round and white from your kitchen, or give me something that's, tall and long from your closet. And they were running all around, but the point is that we had movement, we had activities. The best thing that we did was, or at least that I liked, I wasn't doing the cooking, was we did virtual Chopped. So we gave people a list of ingredients that they needed to have, and then they literally were cooking meals live and online and explaining to people what they were doing. And then they had to present it, and they had to have somebody in their household taste it. And it was just hilarious. We'd never done anything like that before. Look, I think that, there are so many things that, that we can do that allow us to be creative in that way. And it's not always up to HR. Putting together a committee of people. So if you're not in HR, like, if this is HR for HR, it's one thing, but if it's HR for, like, to help another part of the organization, put together a committee of people and brainstorm ideas. There are a million ideas between Pinterest and all of the other kind of chat boards that are out there, and LinkedIn. There are a million ideas of things that you can do, but the point is really to bring people together in some kind of non-work, not a non-work setting, because you're still gonna be there, but to bring people together to remind each other that we like and enjoy being with each other and having fun with each other, and just to take a little bit of time out of the craziness of the day to connect in a very, very different way. And those things, like, it's one thing to have a virtual happy hour where you're just sitting and chatting, and some people have a glass of wine and some people don't because they have another call afterwards, or they got a carpool with their kids, or whatever it is. So you have to be mindful of who's your audience and what what stage of life are they in, what's going to work for them. But to do something that creates movement in people, that like forces them to think outside the box, where you see them in a completely different environment, where you're talking about things that are not like, there has to be a rule, right? No work talk allowed. When we were in the office, I would have breakfast with somebody, or we'd go for a coffee break, or we'd go for like a walking meeting together. You can do that with your colleagues. If you want to take a break and just say, look, I'm going to eat my lunch, but let's like take a walk. I'm going to take a walk around the block. You take a walk around the block, and let's just talk about something other than work, or let's talk about work. Whatever it is that creates that energy and movement is what keeps people engaged and what keeps people there. Ways in which they can affiliate and remember that they have people that they really like to work with. We forget that when we're just work all the time.
Absolutely. I've totally done the work, like the walking meeting before, and I've also done like the walking break. I actually worked at a place 2 or 3 years ago. It was my last in-person job, where the entire company would take like a 10-minute break in the morning and in the afternoon and do like walks. So either you would walk indoors through the warehouse if it was too crappy outside, or you'd walk outside. We had like trails around the building, but the entire company did it, and it was really cool. And so I started doing that during quarantine with some of my coworkers, and it was really helpful. I also love the chopped idea. That's amazing.
Oh my God, it was crazy. And somebody used it as an opportunity to make a meal for her children, because she was like, you know what, I'm going to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. And then her children were the taste testers. So it was pretty funny.
Thank you for sharing that. Okay, this other person had asked, do you have any guidelines to reduce the number of meetings that are held so that interactions do feel more authentic and necessary? I think we've always, like all of us have been there where it's like, this meeting could have been an email. What are we doing? Do you have any tips for the front end of like how to maybe short circuit that?
Yes. So I'm going to show you this slide. First of all, I'm just going to put it out there. No purpose, no meeting. Do not meet just to meet. They're meetings, like really the reason that you should be meeting with people is if there's a new idea, a new opportunity to brainstorm, to problem solve, to update people on, to make a decision. If those are not the primary purpose of what you're going to be meeting about, then you've got to think about, I'm just going to put it in here, like we have so many communication tools at our disposal. So we need to be a lot more selective. We do this to ourselves. We are, again, here, our own worst enemy in this, because we just think, oh, it's Zoom, it's easier. But really, we have instant messaging. We have email. You can pick up the phone and call someone. We've forgotten how to use the phone. Like everything has to be on Zoom, and our eyes hurt. And I have these like terrible blue light glasses that make me look like it's not a beautiful thing. And so you have to think about, when do you really need to meet versus can it be an email, right? There's a mug that's going around, like I just survived another meeting that should have been an email. We need to be much more strategic about why we're meeting with people, when we're meeting with people, versus can it go in an email, versus do I just pick up the phone and kind of, if it's a sensitive issue, or if I have to give somebody feedback, like when do I just do a video phone call that's one-on-one versus having a large group meeting. The other thing I'm going to tell you, and I think this is important just from understanding where we are in our lives today. This is a statistic that I recently heard. Meetings are up by 12%, meeting attendees are up by 13%, and the length of meeting is up by 20%. And our workday is 10 to 15% longer than it was when we were in the office. And what that means is that we're in more meetings with more people all day long. And we're over scheduling to compensate for a lack of social interaction. So it's time to, again, pause, take a breath, and think about, do I really need this to be a meeting? Do I really need this to be an email? And we can be wiser and smarter about that. And even if you, by the way, like you can be infectious about this. If you have a meeting that's on your calendar and it's for an hour, first of all, I'll just say this about meeting. If you don't have an agenda for your meeting and you're in charge of the meeting, like that's, people need to know why they're coming. They need to know what the topics are, what to be prepared for. And when you have an agenda, even if you have a 45-minute meeting, if you have an agenda and you're managing your time, you're done in 30 minutes. And you're giving people 15 minutes back into their day. By the way, even just to go to the restroom or take a walk or jump up and down or whatever, do a half moon in their bedroom, whatever it is that they need to do in order to stretch or in order to breathe or in order to just like you've given somebody a gift. So if you can look at your routines and you look at your calendar and you say, you know what, this meeting could be an email. I've got 3 things that I want to share with this person. I can send it in an email and say, listen, I've decided to cancel it. Here are the 3 things we were going to talk about. Or if you want to make the meeting shorter, here are the things that are on our agenda. If everyone could read these 2 things and come prepared to answer this question, now you've taken kind of all of this debate and all of the precursor, and you've reduced it to really like, what is the purpose of this meeting, and focusing on that purpose and that purpose only. The other thing I'll say is, just from an authenticity perspective, in keeping with the theme, is if you're meeting with somebody one-on-one, I know we're all really, really busy, but take 1 or 2 minutes to just check in with that person and how they are, and just be real, and a friend or a colleague or whatever it is, however you define the relationship. Those moments are really the moments that matter. And people remember that, they recall that, and they need that. We're back to back to back because we think that being busy equals being important. But really what we need to do is just be real and be in the moment. And that moment of energy or kindness or compassion that you gave to somebody in 2 minutes of that meeting will actually probably help carry them through the rest of their day, because they felt like they had an opportunity to relate to somebody else.
Yes, absolutely. It's so important to ask these questions and not ask them in the rhetorical, like, oh, how are you doing today? Like, where you basically are pigeonholing somebody. They have to say, oh, I'm fine, how are you? Like, asking how they really are. And that's one of those things, like, you, especially when you get to know a little bit about your coworkers, you know, like, I ask my coworkers with kids, how are the kids doing? How is all this working out for you? What are you stressing about? My coworkers that are, away from their families right now. Well, how are you guys managing? What's the last time you got to talk to somebody, blah, blah, blah. So like, being able to ask a question and actually hold that space and wait and listen to them is hugely impactful. It's just so helpful. All right, last question I'm going to try and get asked before we do our roundup or our closing out today. From a relationships or connections perspective, what challenges do you anticipate as people transition back to in-person work, and what lasting changes do you think might come out of all of this quarantine year?
Such a good question. I was on a call yesterday where somebody said, oh, people are going to need to relearn how to socialize. And I was like, I don't know that I agree with that sentence, because there's this notion that like common spaces in buildings like cafeteria or large meeting rooms, whatever, are still going to be closed at first, but I don't know that I buy it. I think that the bigger challenge is going to be that some people are going to come back full time onto their office space, and some people will be hybrid, and some people will choose to stay remote, depending on the flexibility and terms that you're offered from your organization. So if they can do that, I think that some organizations are really leaning in that direction. And so, you're more likely to grab a coffee with somebody or do a walking meeting to people that are in your proximity. And so the people who stay remote or who may not be in that day might have a bigger problem of feeling connected or being able to affiliate as much. And I think this is going to be a challenge that managers and organizations will really need to think through about events and team building and collaboration routines, and how to keep people engaged who are sitting in different places. I mean, I think we've done it to an extent. If you have a global team or a large global organization, we've been mostly good about doing that. But if you're in the same time zone and you've got some people in a meeting where you're brainstorming an idea, and so some people are in the room and you're whiteboarding, and some people are on the phone and they can't see it, then use the technology, use a Miro board, or use any of the other collaboration tools that might exist out there. And ask the people on the phone for their ideas first. These are things we're going to have to retrain ourselves to do, because when everyone's virtual or when everyone's live, like, that's okay. I think it's actually getting used to like recognizing that different people are in different places and have different needs. And that adjustment, that agility is going to be the bigger challenge. And so again, it requires us to really pause and think, who's in the room, who's on the phone, who's on this, what's the time zone, what's going on? And then how do I make sure that everyone feels included, that everyone feels like they can contribute equally? How do I make sure that those people who've been really quiet on the phone for the last 20 minutes aren't just like multitasking and sending out emails or slacking about what a waste of time this is, but are actually really engaged in the conversation?
You're reminding me powerfully of a chat that we had previously, and I'm trying to figure out where it is so I can direct people to it. But there's we've, especially since Power to Fly has always been remote and distributed. In 2019, especially, we had a lot of chats that were about trying to, encourage cohesion and teamwork between both in-person teams and remote. So if you have like a core group that all works, like Power to Fly has an entire group of people that are in Argentina, mostly in Buenos Aires. And they get to co-work, obviously not now, but they used to get to co-work a lot. And it was really cool, but the rest of us don't get to do that because I'm in Ohio and our founders are in New York and we've got people in Crimea and Palestine. So it was kind of combined. We would talk about this a lot, about how you can blend a team and really, encourage that culture when you have some people that are remote and some people that are together. So definitely take a look at our archives for that, because it really aligns up nicely with what Shavit has been saying. All right, so I'm so sorry to try and wrap us up here, because I know we have so many more great questions that we didn't get to. But last thing I want to do here, let me share my screen, is I want to talk a little bit more about Moody's. So Shavit, you had shared with us some of the, the company culture and how you would describe it, as well as, your favorite part about working at Moody's. Is there anything that you want to add to what's on the slide here that maybe we didn't get to cover, or anything similar?
No, I mean, listen, I think you always have to think about, like, why are you here? What do you want to do? What are you passionate about? And then what's going to pay the rent? And so it's that combination of like finding your sweet spot. It's almost like a Venn diagram of like, purpose, passion, and, how you actually are able to afford living the lifestyle that you want to live. All of those things are equally are important. Sometimes at some point in your life, one will be more important than the other. But I think that, Moody's is an amazing company. I think you're going to show some of the jobs that we have that are open. I recently actually just transferred to, I'm going to be starting a new role at Moody's. So my role will be open if anybody's interested. It is a really fun role where you get to be really creative and a lot of energy and really kind of, make leaders better at what they do every single day. And so I'll put a plug in for that, but there's a lot that Moody's has to offer and a lot that we do to really make a difference in the world around us, which is an important piece for me in an organization that I work for. So that's the only thing I would add.
Thank you so much. I want to say a huge thank you to you, Shavit. I know it's it's not just the hour you spend with us, right? There's all kinds of prep time and deciding on a topic and all that stuff. So I just want to say a huge thank you to taking time out of your busy life to spend with us and share your experiences. We're so grateful.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And before we wrap, obviously a huge thank you to our attendees. Obviously these events wouldn't be here without you. So thank you so much to everybody who registered, everyone who submitted amazing questions before the chat as well as during. These are some of my favorite events, is when people get involved, because it just makes it feel so much more energizing and so much more interactive. So thank you all so much for that. Like I had touched on earlier, you'll all be getting a link to rewatch this recording within the next 1 to 2 business days. And definitely take a look at some of the links I shared. I posted stuff to where you can follow Moody's and check out some of their open roles. As always, there's also the Moody's page directly. Clearly not every role that Moody's has open will be on Power to Fly, but we definitely encourage you to apply via Power to Fly, because that way we have somebody that can follow up on your application and kind of check how things are going in the process. Obviously, we don't get anything out of this. We don't, take a cut of salaries when you get hired, anything like that. So definitely take advantage of this service, because it's something that definitely has helped me over the years as well. So thank you so much, everyone. And hopefully I'll see many more of you joining us on upcoming chats. Have a good rest of your day, and hopefully you have a lovely week. Bye, everybody.